There's nobody in Washington who works for their people in harder than I do. I don't want to hear it.
Oh, she cursed at any fucking harder.
Work with me so we can house people. That's what I do every day. I should do every day. I'm still on the damn street.
Howdy there, y'all. Let's talk about one of the many ways Wall Street is fucking us. Wall Street is buying starter homes to quietly become America's landlord. Private equity money is pouring into the Phoenix real estate market, turning first-time home buyers into renters. Javier Vidana started out as a real estate agent in 2013 when Arizona's Salt River Valley seemed wide open. It was the aftermath of a housing market crash that had seen the typical home value in the Phoenix metro area fall more than 50%. And a single parent with good credit could tap loan programs geared towards first-time home buyers and find a pretty decent place to live. For Vidana, the challenge was convincing potential clients that a house was something they wanted to own. We were on the phone begging people to buy, he says. There was no buyer confidence whatsoever. So we're talking about the aftermath of the economic crash in 2008. The economy crawled forward and the housing market with it. Vidania made a specialty of tutoring younger buyers on real estate basics. Soon he was supplementing his commission income by selling how-to PDFs on his website and collecting ad revenue on his YouTube channel. Then the pandemic sparked a boom that gave him something new to explain. Americans responded to the work-from-home era by house shopping, and no big city was hotter than Phoenix. The median home was worth about $285,000 at the beginning of the pandemic. It was valued at $435,000 2 years later. It wasn't unheard of for a seller to receive 50 offers or more, or for a prospective buyer to make offers on dozens of different homes before finally closing a deal. So the market really heated up. Across Phoenix, frustrated buyers started pointing fingers. Some complained that Californians were distorting the market by carrying remote work salaries across state lines. Others focused on technology companies, including Zillow Group, that were buying homes and flipping them on a massive scale. But nothing raised locals' ire as much as the growing crop of landlords taking huge sums of capital from Wall Street and building gigantic portfolios of rental homes. The last category bugged Vidania too. Property investors seemed all right when they were using cash to score discounts on homes that needed a lot of work. But these new landlords were taking homes off the market and renting them back to people who would have otherwise been in a position to buy. He saw families getting outgunned by investment firms that could afford to pay $450,000 for a $400,000 house. Rents on single-family homes were also rising fast, up to 19% in the Phoenix metro area during the pandemic. According to Rick Palacios, research director of John Burns Real Estate Consulting, the result was that buyers could lose out on a home and see it resurface at a rent that was hundreds of dollars a month more than what they would have paid with a mortgage. The way I see it, they're stealing from first-time home buyers, Vidania said. They're trying to push this idea that your first step is not to buy a house anymore. Your first step is to rent. I'll take it a step further. They're trying to push the idea that you don't buy a house ever anymore. It's your duty to rent for the rest of your life. That's what they're really trying to do. Amid anxiety over inflation and rising home prices, he isn't the only one who feels that way. Tenant rights advocates have described Wall Street landlords as massive victors, and conservative pundits such as Fox News' Tucker Carlson have blasted them for crowding regular home buyers out of the market, warning that the very fate of the republic is at stake. Democrats have been in agreement with this sentiment. The Biden administration has argued that big investors are making it hard for families to participate in a crucial part of the American dream. The Biden administration has argued that big investors are making it hard for families. So why don't they do something about it? And it's funny how Tucker Carlson is allowed, like, this political realignment is crazy. Tucker Carlson is converting so many people into the right wing because he's allowed to talk about actual issues on his show. I mean, I don't know if he's completely genuine on most of them. I don't think he is. And he's steering them into a party that I don't think is going to help any of these people. But at least he's addressing some of these issues by talking about some of them. You know, you go on Democratic satellite TV and they disregard a lot of these issues. These aren't merely symbolic concerns. Home equity represents a huge portion of wealth in the U.S., especially for moderate income families that have few other opportunities to use borrowed money to invest in assets that can rise in value over time. AKA, the only way to build generational wealth in this country is home ownership. Because, and they'll allude to it here, we have no social safety net in this country. People need to leverage the value of their home to pay for other things here because it's not provided for free, like healthcare or education. Home equity represents a huge portion of wealth in the U.S., especially for moderate income families that have few other opportunities to use borrowed money to invest in assets that can rise in value over time. Price appreciation lets owners accrue wealth and then tap their equity when they have a large or unexpected expense. Other rich countries, including Germany and Denmark, have lower rates of home ownership, but they make up for it with robust social safety nets and pension systems. The resources aren't nearly as comprehensive in the U.S., so many use housing wealth to pay for college, healthcare, and retirement. At the like a reverse mortgage, like you buy this house and then you're selling it back to the bank just to pay for your retirement so you don't die in poverty. It's ridiculous, and then you have nothing to pass on to the next generation. Anyway, at an even more basic level, owning lets a family control its own means of production, says Skylar Olson, principal economist at online mortgage company Tomo. They can mean working out of a home office, renting out a room for Airbnb, or growing vegetables in the backyard. We are all kings of our own land, she says. At first, Vidania wasn't too worried about the new buyers because homes were still affordable. In 2019, he'd helped a client sell a house in Surprise, a suburb 30 miles, outside of Phoenix, to a Japanese company. The buyer, a family-owned conglomerate called Yamasa, redid the kitchen and listed the house for rent at a price that seemed unrealistic. But it rented, and Yamasa's agent started blasting him with emails offering cash for other homes. Yamasa, which did not respond for requests, has since become a prolific buyer of rental real estate, acquiring hundreds of homes in the Phoenix suburbs and thousands of other properties across the United States. According to the company's website, Yamasa was founded more than a century ago as a timber business and later expanded into gas stations, bowling alleys, pachinko parlors, and solar farms. Vidania says he didn't sweat the details of the company's provenance. I was just hoping more corporations wouldn't follow their lead, he says. But it was, on the face of it, a little bit odd. Why would a Japanese pachinko operation want to own starter homes in the Phoenix suburbs? The answer began with the company Yamasa had teamed up with it to operate its rental home business and would go a long way towards understanding Wall Street's new bet on housing. In a capitalist society, what's really wrong? That just makes me laugh. Residential landlords were as worried as anyone else in March 2020 when it seemed as though mass layoffs would cascade into missed rent payments, evictions, and societal unrest. Instead, cooped-up Americans took their stimulus checks and the money they saved during lockdown and started looking for bigger spaces. Pretty soon, capital flow followed. By the middle of 2021, speculation accounted for roughly half of all home purchases in Phoenix. Most of the activity was driven by small landlords and home flippers who targeted affordable homes near good schools, the same places Vidania's clients coveted. Yeah, the same places regular people want their home. The suburban gold rush also proved irresistible to private equity giants, sovereign wealth funds, life insurers, and everything in between. Pagaya Technologies, which uses artificial intelligence software to evaluate consumer credit, started helping clients buy homes. Boston Omaha Court, a holding company that, among other businesses, provides broadband internet to subscribers in Arizona and Utah, hatched a plan to develop rental projects. So did a water company in Denver. Adding single-family rental or something tied to housing in your company name these days is akin to adding .com back in 1999. But managing rental homes is difficult, even in a tight market where landlords can raise rents with impunity. To jumpstart their efforts, many of the newcomers invested through established companies. One of the big players, the one Yamasa chose, was Progress Residential. Progress is a rental company run by Pretium Partners, a company in New York run by Don Mullen, known for overseeing the fabulously profitable Big Short bet against the housing market that cemented the reputation of Goldman Sachs as the financial jungle's apex predator. Mullen left Goldman, then founded Pretium in 2012, raising money from investors and plowing it into rental houses as well as bets on corporate credit and mortgages. In its early days, the company brought real estate at depressed prices, but the market recovered. It learned to win deals by moving fast. These days, it employs software that scans real estate listings every 15 minutes. When an acquisition team sees a home it likes, it estimates rent and repair budget and aims to get a cash offer within hours of the home going on the market. Pretium also works with home builders to develop communities of new rental homes. How could normal people compete with that, is what I'm asking. That's not part of the article. That's my question. How do you compete with AI software and teams of, suits in Manhattan putting together proposals within hours? How do you compete? And of course, they can outbid you, pay over market, and just turn you into a renter. Before the pandemic, it was little known outside of Wall Street, and even there it was overshadowed by single-family landlords such as Invitation Homes, which Blackstone took public in 2017. Then in 2019, Pretium raised $2.5 billion for its single-family rental business, including a chunk of capital from a Connecticut firm called Landmark Partners, priming Mullen's company for a buying spree in which it dominated the hottest corner of the hottest housing market in U.S. history. It won high-profile deals to buy homes from Zillow and Front Yard Residential, adding 35,000 homes last year. That's brought its total to a little less than 75,000 properties. It's the second largest single-family landlord after Invitation. 70... They own 75,000 single-family homes. It's insane. And they're not even the biggest fish. These developments earned it the envy of competitors and the ire of real estate agents such as Vidania, along with the tenant advocates and elected officials. The notion of financial services firms that had gorged on mortgages in the run-up to the foreclosure crisis, using that calamity as a jumping-off point for new businesses, had struck critics as unconscionable. In 2019, Senator Elizabeth Warren, the Massachusetts Democrat, accused the Wall Street landlords of shamelessly profiting off the destruction they caused. I'm sure she pointed her finger, and I'm sure there were cameras there too, because that's really all Liz Warren is good for. I mean, she did do the Consumer Protection Bureau or whatever it's called. And that did help some people, did return billions of dollars to consumers, but that was a long time ago, and all Liz is really good for is, oh gosh, you should be ashamed. I'm a professor. I know things. I'm a grandma. Look at my dog, Bailey. I don't know why I'm giving her that accent. Housing activists contended the companies were following the private equity playbook of heaping on fees and cutting maintenance costs to boost their bottom line. I look at Pretium and its peers as industrialized housing, says Sofia Lopez, Deputy Campaign Director at the Action Center on Race and the Economy, an advocacy group. It seems inconvenient to them that people have to live in their houses. But there was also another way to look at it. 40 years ago, when baby boomers were starting families, Wall Street invited a new field of financial engineering to turn giant pools of capital into loans for consumers. This time around, it was the boomers' kids who were settling down. But a shortage of housing, there is no shortage of housing. There's plenty of empty properties all over this country. There's more empty homes than there are homeless people, let alone people looking to buy homes. But let's continue. But a shortage of housing combined with stagnant wages, that's true, and more stringent lending standards were pushing ownership out of reach for young families. So Wall Street built a new machine, one that collected rental income and packaged it into a different kind of revenue stream for institutional investors. And this version of the story, there aren't enough good... So this is Wall Street's, bullshit. There aren't enough rentals for families who want to live in a good neighborhood, but can't afford a down payment. Moreover, not everyone wants to be a homeowner, which means unclogging drains and, from time to time, dealing with vermin, all while exposing yourselves to the risks of the real estate market. For those of us who live in the big coastal metros where prices go up all the time, that's fine. Oh, so she's saying, you wouldn't, she understands the plight of the small town American and why they need to pay more in rent than it would cost to have a mortgage. And why, the prices are inflated from artificial scarcity from monsters like you buying up all the homes. For those of us who live in the big coastal metro areas where prices go up all the time, that's fine. But in many parts of the country, people would be better off renting and putting money into an index fund, says Jenny Schultz, a fellow at the Brookings Institution. Oh, yes, I'm a fellow. Yes. Schultz, the author of the forthcoming book, Fixer Upper, How to Repair America's Broken Housing Systems, notes that gains in wealth from home ownership also haven't accrued equally across racial and ethnic groups. Redlining rules the federal government implemented in the 1930s shut black families out of homes. And the wealth generated in the post-World War II boom. Even today, black buyers tend to buy later in the housing market style. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we know. It's even worse for black people. I mean, redlining is definitely real. I don't understand what that has to do with Wall Street buying up all the homes. The hoops some people will go to explain evil. Dana Hamilton, Pretium's head of real estate, says the rise of large single-family landlords, isn't crowding out buyers. Okay, well, she adds that Pretium, which owns a tiny percentage of the country's rental homes, is offering a valuable alternative to buying. It used to be that if you wanted to live in a certain neighborhood, you had to be able to buy, she says. Today, if you want to live in a certain neighborhood, you can buy or you can rent. That access is one of the things people don't appreciate about what we do. A boo-hoo, poor Wall Street is not being appreciated for buying all the homes up. They want to be appreciated because in reality, they're giving you the option to pay for the same home at a much higher rate and never own it. Isn't that a great option? Buying and renovating 100 houses a day, as Pretium did last year, is a complicated business requiring a brawny logistics operation to procure supplies and manage labor. The job was even harder during a pandemic that famously made all kinds of things harder to find, including lumber, refrigerators, blah, 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 blah. In some markets, builders even reported having a hard time finding dirt. Pretium typically spends $30,000 fixing up a house when it buys it, focusing on items such as laminate floors and new appliances. Pretium typically spends 20 to 25 days renovating a property. Progress, Pretium's property management arm, is especially good at making homes easy to rent. On a recent tour of available listings, so they spend all this money, stickers on the wall that are Siri engaged and showing how all the schools are closed, right? They'll put on this whole great spiel about how great it is to live there. When the tour guide couldn't find a lockbox to get into the house, he called into the office and had a colleague open the door remotely. Doesn't that sound great to have your overlord landlords be able to open your doors remotely? There are other upsides to renting from a corporate landlord beyond such technical wizardry. Pretium keeps a fleet of 850 service vehicles for the most common repairs. In a perfect world, a tenant might call about a leaky faucet in the morning and have it fixed by a maintenance worker who already has a replacement drain pipe in the back of his van and get buzzed into the house remotely while the tenant is at work. Doesn't that sound perfect? Pretium says 80% of its issues get fixed on the first maintenance visit. Plenty of happy customers. There are more than 4,000 members of a Facebook group called Victims of Progress Residential, where tenants complain about rent hikes and unexpected fees and trade tips on navigating the inevitable corporate bureaucracy that comes with being one of the 75,000 customers. Mackenzie Cruz rented a 3-bedroom house in a gated community in Mesa from Pretium because it was the first landlord who didn't turn away on account of her dog. The following experience sounds like something you might get if you rented a house from a cable company, which, if Boston Omaha is successful, you might actually do one day. So even cable companies are buying up homes. Cruz says there were 3 erroneous late fees, computer glitches, and countless hours in customer service hell. Then came the big upcharge. Cruz and her husband asked the landlord to extend their lease by a couple of months so they could wait for the builder to complete the new home they were buying. Pretium said yes, but raised the rent from $1,900 a month to $3,100, including fees and other charges. The whole time we were there, I was working nonstop to avoid giving them more money than I was supposed to, Cruz says. It was almost like a third job after being a full-time worker and a full-time mom. See, they're offering you the option to be, constantly on the phone all day trying to fight ridiculous fees that make no sense too. Isn't that great? But, you don't have to clean out your drain because they have a van with a drain pipe in it ready for you. Cable company vibes are annoying enough when you affect your ability to stream selling. Can writers stop? This is what you get when you get like a Columbia journalism graduate writing. Like, stop trying to make, no one cares about your fucking, well, it's like a stream selling Sunset. What even is that? Dean Zoller, who rents a home from a corporate landlord that Pretium acquired in January 2021, says he started withholding rent payments after the landlord ignored his request for help fixing a leaky ceiling. He had issues with his home before and complained in November 2020 after the Pretium deal was announced, but before it was closed, and heard nothing for months. The thing I was worried about is that any minute they're going to come in and say, no, you have to move out, he says. There's a lot of stress that comes from the lack of communication. It sucks. A representative for Pretium says the company worked with Cruz to resolve the erroneous charge. The spokesman says that Pretium has no record of Zoller's complaint and notes that the tenant recently entered into a rent assistance program that provides him with protection from eviction under state law. So they're smearing the dude, the dude saying, I had to deal with him. There was issues. And there was like, that guy, he said that we had issues because he's on rent assistance. So that broke ass bitch. They're trying to smear him. And it also goes to show what their PR company thinks of people who are having hard times with money. They think it's a moral failing, apparently. Crazy. But those aren't the only complaints. At the beginning of the pandemic, an advocacy group called the Private Equity Stakeholder Project began publishing research on eviction filings in 24 counties where court data was easily available online. Mullen's company, according to the group, filed more eviction cases in those counties during a period when a federal eviction ban was in place. So even when the federal eviction ban was in place, these dudes are lining up all their ducks to get everyone out of there. In February, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison filed a suit alleging that Pretium and Zoller's landlord, Havebrook Homes, had carried out a plan to extract even greater profits from their tenants by severely under-maintaining their homes. You don't say. Wall Street would do austerity onto their rental houses, keep raising the rents while cutting the services and quality of living? You don't say. Imagine they ran a country like that. A representative for Pretium says the company was still reviewing the lawsuit, adding that it's quadrupled its maintenance team in Minnesota since acquiring Havenbrook at the beginning of 2021. He calls the Private Equity Stakeholder Project overtly biased and says isn't a credible source on our nation's housing, but they are, and they have no bias. In July, the firm complained in a letter to Representative James Clyburn that the advocacy group was conflating eviction filings which didn't violate the federal ban with actual evictions, which in many cases would. Pretium, it says, was complying with the law. Jim Baker, the executive director of PESP, sent Clyburn his own letter arguing that Pretium has misinterpreted him and that the threat of eviction can often be enough to make a tenant feel like they have to leave. You don't say. You telling me you have some eviction filings on your door when you come home? You're not going to be scared? You get some shit in the mail? The Pretium spokesman also says the company provided tenants with more than $30 million of rent assistance and other financial aid and helped its tenants access an additional $50 million through government programs. Pretium announced in February the hiring of new corporate affairs executive Jocelyn Moore, who served as the NFL's chief communications officer during a period when the Pro Football League was grappling with racial justice protests and questions about player safety. In her first interview after joining the company, she told Bloomberg Television that by investing in rental homes, Pretium was bringing private capital to bear on one of society's greatest challenges. So they got the PR person who tried to smooth out the NFL being a bunch of racists and everyone having concussions and dying from dementia. They hired that person, and her first PR move was to basically say, This is just Wall Street trying to tackle one of society's greatest challenges. This is private money finally doing what public money couldn't. No, it's you guys making a ton of money and making it way harder for regular people to buy houses. That's what it really is. By then, the company had a new reason to think about its public perception. Tenants were complaining to the pension funds whose capital fuels its single-family rental machine. In Minnesota, gosh, public pressure on their actual funding. Oh, gosh. In Minnesota, organizers for United Renters for Justice showed up at an August meeting of a state pension fund board demanding that it canceled a planned $100 million investment in Landmark Partners, the company that invested in Pretium. Landmark declined to comment. In December, the board convened again. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat who presided over the meeting, grimaced on a Zoom call as tenants told their stories. Then the state's fund's chief investment officer advised the board that if they delayed the investment again, it might miss out on the opportunity. Walz said he was convinced Landmark was acting in good faith to address concerns, and the board voted the deal through. Oh, Wall Street won anyway. At least the people were smart enough to make a ruckus and actually target the thing that could hurt them. The day before the vote, Javier Vidania contemplated Pretium's rise over lunch at a Mexican restaurant in Litchfield Park, a West Phoenix suburb 30 miles away in Scottsdale. Executives from the single-family rental industry gathered at a conference where some sipped $70 cocktails on a terrace, trying to figure out what to do what one lender described as an abundant or even excessive amount of capital flooding into their space. So the floodgates are open, baby. Yamasa has slowed its purchases in Phoenix, but Mullen's company is still a force to be reckoned with locally. In 17 zip codes in the Phoenix area, Pretium-connected entities accounted for at least 5% of all home purchases last year, according to an analysis by Redfin Corp. Whether that was too much is hard to say. Is it wrong? It's a capitalist society, Vidania says. What's really wrong? So Wall Street turning a nation of homeowners into a nation of renters, right? It's a tragedy, but it's a very narrow scope because we're leaving out most Americans, because this is a battle between the rich and the professional class / upper middle class at this point. The people who can actually afford to buy homes, and these investment mega firms that are buying them up at crazy rates. There's also the entire underclass, the working class of people who will never be able to afford homes in the current economy. Whether, Mullen's company was buying up 75,000 homes or not. There's a whole underclass of people out there living under bridges and tents. There's homeless, Vidania grew up in nearby Maryville, which was developed by a group that included Victor Gruen, the architect who pioneered the enclosed shopping mall. 8 years ago, when he was 21, he and his wife bought their first home using a down payment loan. Their mortgage of $600 a month got them an old house with no central air conditioning. It was a start. Home values rose, allowing the young couple to trade up to a nicer house. They bought and sold again in 2018, moving to a part of town with a better school district where the streets are lined with citrus trees. His path might not work for every family, he acknowledged, but it worked for him. On the other hand, it helped that Vidania, like Pretium, started buying when the market was at its low point. So what about the underclass of people, right? How much would it cost to end the homelessness in America? So, because, a lot of the bullshit point of view of the Wall Street, all the silver lined bullshit they were trying to feed you, they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to tackle a societal problem, right? They're all offering alternative services. They're giving you options. They're good people. They're providing a service. They're valuable. They're not extracting wealth. They're not leeches, right? How much would it cost to end homelessness in America? According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it would cost $20 billion to end homelessness in the United States. So these are Democrats of old. This is FDR. This was what he was working on before he died. He called it his second Bill of Rights. It was a Bill of Rights. It was a Bill of Economic Rights. Every American has the right to 1, a job, 2, an adequate wage and decent living, 3, a decent home, 4, medical care, 5, economic protection during sickness, accident, old age, or unemployment, 6, a good education. So Democrats of old wanted to make sure every single American was guaranteed by their birthright a job with a good wage, a house, medical care, unemployment insurance, all sickness insurance, and college, a good education, trade school, whatever. Let's look at modern Democrats. Here's your modern Democratic heroes. This is from the LA Times. LA's homelessness crisis boils over. I don't know why I said homelessness. Forgive me. Pain, confusion, anger, and a congressional F-bomb. Maxine Waters used an expletive while talking to a crowd of homeless people in her district on Friday after suggesting they go home. From the Daily Mail, Democratic Rep Maxine Waters sparks fury by telling homeless crowd to go home when they crashed LA emergency shelter event in search of housing vouchers. So let's hear this out of touch crazy woman. This is about 100 years later. We're not even 100 years out of FDR. And instead of trying to fight to guarantee every single one of these people a house, a job, a life worth living, she's yelling at them to go home.
Yesterday is when I saw people standing on the street and they thought they could get Section 8 vouchers here. Right. Cannot get Section 8 vouchers here. But who put that information? 8 vouchers is a long line. We are fighting in Washington in something called the Build Back Better program. I put $25 billion that we're fighting to give people more Section 8. Now the money that is available is for the absolute homeless under the emergency program. And that's what you started signing up for today. But because it could not be organized in a way, the workers that we forced to come down here from LASA and place to take the applications, they have put down their...
So she just was tooting her own horn about all the things she's done for these people who obviously have not seen anything concrete or material in their lives because they are homeless right then and there, asking her for help. And then she goes on to say, and I was trying to help you guys today, but then we stopped because you guys suck and you don't know how to behave yourselves.
Laptops and they are gone. There are no more applications.
Did they move locations, Maxine? Because I'm hearing one is on Wilshire.
Did they move
another location where they're taking apps? Is there any more locations than this one?
Man, there's so many people out here.
I want everybody to go home. And I want...
We don't got no home. That's why we here.
Miss Waters, can you home we gonna go to? Just a moment. Just a moment. Nothing is going to happen today. Nothing is going to happen anymore today.
So what about all these names?
What we gonna... Well, that's what...
Well, can you do something? Working hard to help you.
That's why I'm here. And so I will be downtown with LASA. I will get the housing authority. That's why they came out here today. I made them come out here. And I want to go.
And you need to know why they're failing, because Blanca Jimenez repeated, we gave her several meeting requests for you concerning this in LASA for years. And now they sit you
There's
there.
nobody in Washington who works for their people in harder than I do.
I believe
I don't want to hear it.
I believe you.
Oh, she cursed at them. Any fucking harder.
Work with me so we can house people. That's what
I do every day.
What you do every day? I'm still on the damn
The
street.
money that you got
She said it here, she doesn't pass it out.
in Washington, D.C. I will
That's what we do.
continue
We
to
do.
work.
Right.
I will
What's happening? That's how
no more vouchers today.
You think she talks to lobbyists or campaign donors like that?
Dylan! You son of a bitch. What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils? Huh?